more, I'm getting bored, and then all of a sudden I figure out what's actually happening. I mean, I didn't figure it out on my own, like it's revealed, and I was just like, oh, that's genius. Like that's really smart. And so if you're tired of me really shitting on him, I'm gonna talk slightly more positive about him now. Like you have crafted this thing that I'm really enjoying, and then you ruined it. What's up everyone, my name is Zach and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing something I never thought that I would do, and I'll explain why I finally decided to do this. But I have actually read all of Riley Sager's books. So it kind of became like a running joke for the last 2 years that like Riley Sager's books and I don't get along. So I guess the logical thing to do was then to read them all, except I really did this as a joke. But I actually am surprised to find out that my results after reading all of them are different than I thought they were going to be. So I actually was a little bit surprised by some things, and I'm excited to share those with you all. Really, the point of this video is to review all of Riley Sager's books. If you've been on my channel before, I have reviewed his books in the last, I think, 2 years as they've come out. So the last house on the left at the lake or something, I don't know what it's called. We'll get there in a second. And the most recent one that came out, the house on the hill, or see, I don't even remember the names of his books, but I'll have them on the screen as I talk about them, and then I will tell you a little bit about the book and then my reading experience. I'm gonna do this video in a specific order. I'm gonna go from the one that I liked the least to the one that I liked the most out of all of them. So without further ado, thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you haven't already, a like on the video goes a long way. Subscribing to my channel helps me out a ton, and I would love to hear from you. Have you read Riley Sager's books? Are you a fan of his? Which brings me to my next point. If you're a huge Riley Sager fan, like, please don't be offended by my review of him. I listen to people all the time trash books that I love. Sometimes it's just all in good fun and good humor, and that's really the point in this. That's the whole reason why I read Riley Sager's books, is because I just thought it would be like a silly, goofy, fun time, and that's what I'm trying to convey here. Yeah, so I hope I don't offend anyone by giving like my silly opinion about something. I also am wearing contacts for the first time in many, many years, and my eyes are having a really hard time adjusting to that. So they may cross a little bit, which I kind of feel them doing now, but we're gonna push through. But yeah, if you've been here before, I usually wear glasses, and I got contacts. Again, this is not my first time having them, so my eyes are just having a hard time adjusting to that. So let's get into the books. I'll start with the book that I disliked the least, and there are two of those. There are two of Riley Sager's books that I have DNF'd, and to be quite honest, I would have DNF'd more, except for I was dedicated to doing this video. So before this video even started, the two that I DNF'd, the first one was the first Riley Sager book that I ever read, The Last Time I Lied. So I actually read this book. It was our first ever Patreon pick. My wife Casey and I had been doing our channel for a little bit, and we decided we would start a Patreon, which now I pretty much solely do our channel, and we've moved the membership to YouTube membership. But back then we were doing extra content on Patreon, and a shout out to our first ever patron, Jane, who joined our Patreon as the first person and read the first book with us for our Patreon book club ever. And that was The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. What like an odd book to start off on, but Jane was a good sport, and we discussed it together, and it was a good time. I actually DNF'd this book, and I'll tell you why in a second, but the book is essentially about a girl who had 3 friends who died or went missing at a summer camp, and then she kind of grows up and goes away and becomes someone popular in New York City, and then gets invited to go back to this same camp to help teach like art and painting because she's popular as an artist. And when she goes back, she wants to discover more about what happened to her 3 friends that left camp that night. And then at the camp, 3 people who are staying there that she is kind of teaching disappear. So it seems like the crime is like repeating itself. And the whole book, the whole purpose is about finding out what happened to the original 3 girls and then what's happening in present day. So that sounds like a really great setup. Like, I love a summer camp atmosphere. It was my first Riley Sager book, so I was really excited. I thought it was going to be really thrilling and really fun. And what I quickly learned, and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try not to talk about it too much in this video, but it is a big problem with Riley Sager's books. He is a male that always, and I can say this because now I've read all of his books, all of them have female main characters, and he is writing from a male's perspective, which is fine. You can write female characters from the male gaze, but he does it really, really poorly. It's almost like he's never been around another female in his entire life, or has taken time to like actually listen to them, because it's like he takes every cliche that we say about teenage girls and then puts them into like all women all the time. It's really, really bad. And it was particularly cringy and creepy in this book because we have teenage girls and there are just comments that are made about their appearance and things that was just really uncomfortable to read, and it really ruined the reading experience for me. I think if he didn't write female characters so poorly, a lot of his books I would have enjoyed a lot more. So that kind of just gave me a bad taste starting out with The Last Time I Lied. I DNF'd it and went about my day. And then I became a Penguin Random House audio influencer, so I get free audio books from Penguin Random House. And the next summer, so I read them out of order, but these, again, are the DNFs. I read his newest publication, which was The House Across the Lake. This is a story of a failing actress who is widowed. Her husband has passed away and she lives in the city and she goes to stay in Vermont at a family's lake house. And when she gets there, she notices that across the lake, she has there are two people who live in a house across the lake. And one day, it's a married couple. The woman ends up almost drowning, and our main character, Casey, jumps into the lake and kind of saves her from drowning. And so after that moment, they strike up a friendship together and they start to get to know each other. So there is a male and a female married couple, like I said, and she starts to get to know them. And because she's across the lake, she can kind of see into their house. I guess they don't use curtains or close their curtains. And so she kind of starts to watch them. And one day she sees something happen, that makes it so that she doesn't think their marriage is as perfect as they've tried to make it seem. So the whole book is about her figuring out what's going on with their marriage while also kind of spying on them, and they don't know that. And then it kind of turns into obsession. That premise is genius. But what happens is Riley Sager also can't write about addiction very well, and he very poorly represents addiction, and again, can't write female characters well. So the idea of the story sounds like a very typical thriller that has a cool atmosphere of being at a lake and kind of spying on your neighbor and things that we read about in fiction and thrillers. But it was so bad because he, like I said, continues to not be able to write female characters and is very offensive in his books, in my opinion. And that just kind of ruined my reading experience for it. And so I actually DNF'd that book. I was buddy reading it with someone else at the time, and I was like, can you just tell me what happens at the end? And they told me, and I was like, okay, well, I don't care to have finished this anyway. So that's my experience with The Last House on the Lake. So far, I've had 2 DNFs, and my experience with Riley Sager has been really bad. And so flash forward to this year, I know Riley Sager is coming out with a new book. I had a silly goofy time reviewing his in the past, so I was like, okay, fine. It's a free audio book. It'll be a good time. Why not? So I listened to his newest release, Is the Only One Left, and yeah, that came out as a free audiobook. I was like, okay, let's go. I'm just going to do this for fun. The Last House on the Lake, or whatever I said the last book was, and this one, I actually have their own videos up on my channel, and I'll put a picture of the thumbnail on the screen for you guys if you're interested in checking out those. I will talk more in depth about my experience of reading them as I read them. So yeah, feel free to check that out if you want more information. But for this one, I was really excited going into it because the cover is really pretty, and it's there's this house on this mountaintop that is in the middle of the ocean. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Kind of reminds me of And Then There Were None. Okay, so I have tried to explain this last one, but it is so complicated that I'm actually going to read you guys the description that you're given. I know that that's not ideal, but I will then talk about my feelings about the book. I've just tried to explain it, and the basic setup is just so complicated that I'm just going to read it to you guys. So on Goodreads, it says, at 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope. Now reduced to a schoolyard chant, the Hope family murder shocked the Maine coast one bloody night in 1929. While most people assumed 17-year-old Lenora was responsible, the police were never able to prove it. Other than her denial after the killing, she has never spoken publicly about that night, nor has she set foot outside Hope's End, the cliffside mansion where the massacre occurred. Stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It's now 1983, and home health aide Kit arrives at decaying Hope's End to care for Lenore after her previous nurse fled in the middle of the night. In her 70s and confined to a wheelchair, Lenora was rendered mute by a series of strokes and can no longer communicate. But she communicates with Kit by tapping out sentences on an old typewriter. One night, Lenora uses it to make a tantalizing offer. I want to tell you everything. In quotations, it wasn't me. Lenora said, but she's the only One that's not dead. As Kit helps Lenore write about the events leading to the Hope family massacre, it becomes clear that there's more to tell than people know. But when new details about her predecessor's departure come to light, Kit starts to suspect Lenore might not be telling the complete truth, and that seemingly harmless woman in her care could be far more dangerous than she first thought. So I will say I enjoyed this book up until I enjoyed the very beginning because, that synopsis is very intriguing. You're like, whoa, that sounds really interesting. And it's obvious that there's going to be this past and present thing about this crime that happened in the past. And then now we have our main character who's going to sit with a murderer, and that more happened. So you're trying to do detective work to figure out what that was. And you meet a cast of characters that work at Hope's End. And it was just really interesting at first. And then Riley Sager, fell into the same patterns of writing really terrible women. And I was like, this is really annoying. Is this the only thing that he knows how to do? And that kind of started to ruin my story again. But I will say it wasn't as bad in this one, I didn't think. And he still came up with a clever story. And I was leaning towards a 4-star. And then what happened was the ending was so overcomplicated and there were 8 billion twists that I was like, I can't stand that. That is one thing that I talk about with thrillers is I cannot stand when there are so many twists that it's you didn't have to do this. You could have just had one good twist with maybe a few small things along the way. I only need one reveal. I don't need 92 of them. I say it's playing the game Twister is how I feel when I read books like that. And I don't like it. So I did not like this book because the male gaze never ends for him. And I didn't like the ending and how he tied everything together. There was one plot device in particular that I was really, this was not needed. This was not needed at all. You did not need to make this connection. It could have been left alone. And this connection makes this whole story unbelievable. And you've just turned this now into an absurd thriller. No. If you want to know more about that, then you can watch the video where I reacted to it while I read it. Okay, so the next book that getting up to the one that I enjoyed the most, would be Home Before Dark. This is one of Riley Sager's older publications. This is the story about Maggie, who when she was growing up, her parents bought this haunted house, and they go to live in it, and then they end up having to leave, and her dad writes a nonfiction book about their time in this home, and that nonfiction book goes viral and gets really popular, and all kinds of people start to read it, and they kind of get famous from it. But nobody really believes that the things that he said happened in the book actually happened. Then her dad passes away, and she goes back to renovate this home. She didn't even know that her dad still owned it until he passed away, and she goes back to renovate it. That's where the story really takes off, is she's trying to figure out if the things that her dad wrote about in this nonfiction book really happened, and what is Branberry Hall all about? That's the name of the house, and what led them to flee, and what has really happened, and what is the history of this house. And so through doing that, she gets those answers. And I will say I enjoyed this book more than the ones that I've listed so far. And again, the problem persists through, and he just makes really poor decisions. He started to build a really good story and really good characters, and then the characters just do things that I felt were really dumb and didn't make any sense. And the twist in this one, I also was it's okay. It's pretty forgettable. And honestly, for Riley Sager's writing, I was not too surprised that he chose for this to be the twist. I will say what this book did well is it is deeply unsettling. There are a lot of really unsettling moments. It kind of reminds me of Amityville Horror, where there's this horrific house and the things inside of it are really unsettling. I will say the atmosphere is built well and the tension is built well. And so that kind of allowed me to forgive some of the things that were happening. But by the end of it, I was you have crafted this thing that I'm really enjoying, and then you ruined it. Okay, now we've made it to the final 3 in the video, where I'm actually going to start to talk a little bit more positively about Riley Sager. He's never going to be one of my favorite authors. I'm never really going to enjoy his books a lot, but these last 3 that I'm going to talk about, I did take away something more than I did from the other ones. So if you're tired of me really shitting on him, I'm going to talk slightly more positive about him now. So the next one that I read is called Lock Every Door. This is the story about a woman who really needs help financially, and she sees an ad for a job where she can essentially house sit an apartment in an apartment complex, and that the place is called Bartholomew. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but it's like this high-end apartment complex in Manhattan, and she is charged with like house sitting it. She doesn't really understand why and why she's getting paid so much to do it. And so when she goes there, she starts to talk to the other residents and gets really close with one of them. And then they start to tell her that like really bad things are happening in this apartment and she should be wary and watch her back and everything. And then this friend that she gains ends up disappearing. And so now she's invested in figuring out what happened to this friend. And she's wondering if it's connected to this job that she has in this apartment building that she's staying in. So the whole time she knows that this building has like a really hidden, mysterious, and dark past. She just doesn't know why and like what the true answers are. So it's really a book about her trying to figure that out while she's staying in this really creepy place. There's a new cover of this book being released, and I really, really like the cover, and I'm tempted to buy it at some point, but I don't need any more physical books. Anyways, I ended up giving this book 4 stars. In my journal where I write my reviews, I have a 3.75, but I feel like I've been really hard on Riley Sager, and I don't know, I kind of feel bad for it, but I would say that this is a 4-star. He continues, and I'm going to say this through every book because it's true in all of his books, that male gaze is just so strong that I can't not mention it because it is a part of all of these. And you really should know that going in. Like, the female characters just do things that I feel like are really stereotypical and cliche. And whereas like some females do those things, they have been used to like negatively talk about women in society. And I feel like writing them in a horror/thriller novel is just not great, but it was a little bit less in these last 3. So I will say that. What really bumps this up to a 4-star for me is I was like chugging along in this book and I'm like, this is like kind of boring. I don't understand why I'm doing this. It really reminds me of Home Before Dark, the book that I just talked about. You've taken these characters, you've put them in this creepy place with this creepy setting. I get it. You can do that. Good job. You build tension, you build suspense, you build atmosphere. Great. Good for you. I don't really care anymore. I'm getting bored. And then all of a sudden I figure out what's actually happening. I mean, I didn't figure it out on my own. Like, it's revealed. And I was just like, oh, that's genius. Like, that's really smart. The twist in this one actually got me. I was like, oh, okay. And it like completely changed the way that I was viewing this book. And like looking back, I kind of want to reread it. So maybe I will buy that really cool cover. But I just ended up really, really enjoying the plot twist and the reason behind this. And like, I don't know. This is one that I would actually recommend along with the last 2 that I'm going to talk about. So my second favorite Riley Sager book is Final Girls, which is one that people talk about negatively a lot. And I am currently, for this month and next month, running a readathon called the Final Girls versus Killers readathon, where people are placed on teams and either the Final Girls are going to kill the killer or the killer is going to kill the Final Girls, even though, yeah, you get the point. And then next month it'll be like revenge of the same thing and people will switch teams or whatever. So I feel like it was cool to kind of read this while that readathon was going on and definitely had me thinking about that. And I was pleasantly surprised by this. So basically, this is the story of a girl who is a final girl. And which it just occurred to me, like something that happens at the very end that was like actually really cool. So this girl is a part of this massacre and she is the only girl left. And the story goes back between past and present as we're unraveling what happened that night that led to all of her friends being killed. And as she is kind of escaping, she sees this man walking towards her and she's all like bloodied and everything. And he's like, oh my God, what happened? Like, let me help you. And so he helps her and they form like a friendship over time. They kind of keep in contact as our main character grows up and tries to live as much of a normal life as possible. She joins like a final girl group where they kind of talk about being final girls and like what life is like after something really tragic. And then what happens next is one of those final girls that she's close with, dies by suicide. And so there's some commentary about that. And then the other person that was part of their group actually comes to live with her and her boyfriend, which that's where some of the male gaze happened and some of the awkward things and weird things. But this book was very unsettling and I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars as well. Comparing it to Lock Every Door, this one was a lot better. than that one all the way through. Like this one held my attention all the way through the book, and I really enjoyed it. I was very surprised by that, and it was in my reading order of reading Riley Sager's books for this video. I think this was maybe the first one that I read since the initial ones that I talked about at the very beginning of this video, the first three. This was the first one that I read when I decided I was going to do this video. And I was like, oh, okay, he actually can do this. Like, the male gaze was not nearly as bad in Final Girls. It was a lot better, like a lot better. Still there at times, but a lot better. And so I was like, oh, this is proof that you can do this, Riley Sager. Okay. All right, so my favorite one is actually very surprising to me, and that is Survive the Night. Going into Survive the Night, I actually knew how this book ended. I knew what the twist was already because one of my close friends read it like, I don't know, like a year ago or something. And I was like, I hate Riley Sager. I'm never going to read this book. Just tell me how it ends because I'm curious. And so I actually already knew the ending going into this book, but I was dedicated to making this video, so I did it anyway. So my perspective of this being my favorite one is coming after I already knew what the twist was. So I think that says a lot about how much I like it, but also I want to recognize that, like, if people didn't like the twist, I could understand. I just already knew it going into this. So this is the story of Charlie, who needs to go home in the middle of a semester, and she lives really far away. And so she gets on a rideshare app essentially and meets a guy who she is going to like, he lives near her, so they're getting in the car together as like a rideshare and going on this road trip. At her university, there have been a series of murders, and there is a serial killer at large. When she gets in the car with this guy and starts talking to him, she starts to be fearful that he is the serial killer. And then they stop at like either a rest stop or a gas station or whatever, and she kind of snoops through his things and sees that his ID card is not the name and information that he has given her. So she starts to get really scared. And she has a boyfriend who she's been seeing for a long time on campus, and he's kind of calling to check in and, you know, make sure she gets places safely. And so she's kind of updating him throughout the novel about like, okay, like, I'm getting kind of scared. So yeah, she starts to tell him, and yeah, everything unfolds from there. And it's an adventure, and it's a really good time. And I actually really liked the characters. I really liked the ending. Even knowing how it was going to end, I felt like it was done really well and really thoughtful. Again, the male gaze was less in this one than in other ones. I mean, our character does make dumb decisions, and that's the biggest complaint I had heard about this book, was that our main female character does things that no one would ever do. And I think that is true. However, in thrillers, we do have to suspend disbelief. And I was expecting to have to be like, okay, why is this girl doing this? Like, no one would ever do this, ever. Even in like a fictional world, no one would do this. But it isn't that bad. I really thought it was going to be, and it was not. So I think the things that she did actually made a lot of sense, even though they were dangerous. But we as humans sometimes do things that are dangerous. So those are all of Riley Sager's books and all my thoughts and opinions on them. I hope you guys enjoyed this video because I did it for you. I would have never read all of Riley Sager's books, except for it's kind of become a running joke, and I thought that I would do it just as a good time. And come to find out, there are some Riley Sager books that I like, and that's quite shocking. I think every year I will continue to read his books and do like a review of them, just because it's kind of become a thing at this point. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much to the Mostly Ghostly crew for supporting my channel every month. If you're interested, I have a channel membership where I have an every other month book read where we read a book together and discuss it. We have monthly hangouts where we jump on a video call and hang out and discuss life and books. We have a separate section in the Discord where we talk about books and life and reading and all the things. So if you're interested in supporting my channel in another way, that is how you can do that. So thank you to you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Down, my head in my hands now. Play it back, I still can't seem to figure out when the rain came and we became a mosaic.